Greater Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour. It's edition 218. It's week 43 of 2025. I'm Alexander Leipner, and welcome to the show. If you're listening for the very first time, a very special welcome to you. And if you're a regular listener, well, it's good to have you back on air or online across Johannesburg and Pretoria, South Africa, and of course, if you're listening from anywhere and everywhere else in the world, I know we've got some great listeners in the United States, Qatar, Nigeria, New Zealand, the UK, sending you warm regards from South Africa. The weather's really performing. It's ripening as we speak, as summer progresses, and I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandton land. Talking about good weather, I see, Vincenzo, you've donned a more summery outfit this week. Some shorts and some t-shirts. Well, that's great. It does get quite warm this time of the year, and especially in the evenings, it's glorious. A quick look at this past week, Sandton Times Diary. And Norwegian Cruise Line hosted a workshop providing some updates on their latest from the world of cruising. I mean, I know everyone's busy planning their holidays right now. And a lot of people are saying, I'm going to go all-inclusive. I'm going to go to an island. Or I'm going to go to a resort. Let me go for the all-inclusive. And a lot of people forget that you can also do a cruise. So this was a nice sort of refresher. And incidentally, also got some interesting insights from a related article this week. Flight Centre had a global PR survey which revealed that nearly 70% of South Africans now find the idea of a cruise holiday appealing. So there you have it. And that's significantly higher compared to all other countries surveyed. And then also, nearly 90% of South African Norwegian Cruise Line bookings are for balcony cabins or higher, with inside and ocean view cabins rarely seeing an uptake. And at an average booking value of around $6,000 per balcony stateroom, the South African market is discerning, clearly prioritizing space, quality, and comfort. How's that? Vincenzo was told that South Africans are always looking for a cheap deal. Guess not in cruising, eh? Looks like it's different. But I'll put some more up on the website this week if that interests you. Then I also had a chance to try out the chef's table at a dinner at Gigi in Waterfall Corner. And let me tell you, do yourself a favor and book for one of these. I think they only do it once or twice a week. I think it's on a Wednesday and a Saturday, or just a Wednesday. 7-course dinner. And every month, chef chooses a hero ingredient. I think this month it's been corn or millies. And every dish has a slither of millie in it. And it was absolutely fantastic. They pair it with some interesting cocktails and drinks. And I think next month they're doing watermelon, December's tomatoes, and January's going to be mangoes. So really, such a vibe, great experience. Then World Champagne Day is coming up on the 24th of October. So had a lovely lunch at the Sandton Sun Sand Deck to mark the build-up to World Champagne Day. If you're a bit of a bubbles drinker, your day is coming. But we've got a banger of a show lined up for you this week, so let's get into it. In a bit, I'll be chatting to a fellow media colleague who, apart from being wildly amusing and into his sport, is also someone who really enjoys wine. Take a listen for that interview. As always, then we catch up with a regular entertainment commentator to chat all things entertainment as we look at all things on the big screen and the small screen. And then also, finally, we take a look at a creative initiative to raise awareness and funds around mental health in Sandton, and you won't want to miss that. Another jam-packed show for you this hour, and if you'd like to get in touch, I'd love to hear from you. Get in touch with your questions, comments, and feedback. Editor at sandtontimes.co.za. Connect on social media at Sandton Times, or hop onto the website sandtontimes.co.za. And then, of course, the WhatsApp line, exclusive to the Sandton Times Hour, 084 Sandton, 084 726 3866. And if you're not part of the podcast community, be sure to subscribe digitally to the Sandton Times Hour on your favorite platform, be it Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, AfriPods. You choose your platform. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
With a career that spanned continents and industries, Dan Nicholl has hosted events around the world, worked with leading international brands, and interviewed some of the biggest names in sport, entertainment, and of course, wine. You'll know him from the Dan Nicholl Show, that wildly popular personality-driven series that ran for 16 seasons on DSTV, where Dan welcomed everyone from Evander Holyfield and Jamie Dornan to Pearl Tucci and A.B. de Villiers. Now the show lives on podcast, and he's also giving his listeners front row seats to some of his candid conversations and infectious laughs. But that's not all. Dan also is the founder and host of Dan Really Likes Wine. That's South Africa's leading digital wine vodcast, a space where the world of wine meets a sense of humor and accessibility, and that's all of his own. Through his online shows, private tastings, and live events, Dan is redefining how South Africans engage with wine, making it approachable, fun, and filled with stories of people who make, sell, and drink it. Dan's not just a charming host, or at least that's what I can make out from his handwriting. He's the real deal when it comes to wine knowledge, fresh from the buzz of Cape Wine 2025, where he interviewed some of the biggest names on the continent, and of course, 15 episodes of Dan Really Likes Wine, where he's in conversation with some global experts. And it's a warm welcome to the Sandton Times Hour, Dan Nicholl.
A very disappointing welcome. You cut out about 12 minutes that I wrote for you, but we'll have to make do. That's a very generous welcome, Alex, and thank you. Lovely to be joining you.
Dan, it's so great, and I'm always thrilled to see you. We last saw each other, I think, at a Graham Beck tasting, and we always have a good laugh, and I must say, it's always wonderful to engage with you. But you've hosted events around the world, and you've interviewed some of the biggest names in sport and entertainment. I mean, I mentioned some of those names. If you look back at some of the guests and moments, which of them stand out as some of the most unforgettable?
It's a question that's often asked, and it's one that's quite difficult to answer because so many of the guests give you different reasons to remember them. There are guests, you mentioned Evander Holyfield. I remember him giving me a boxing lesson in New York years ago. Thankfully, it was not an actual boxing lesson, or I might not be here to tell the tale, but that was very special, being able to spend time with some of the great athletes of the world record holders, Olympians, people who've won great awards. Tico Torres, the Bon Jovi drummer, is always very entertaining. Andy Garcia, who's done a lot of work with the Laureus World Sports Awards. But it's also guys who've got stories to tell from a background where they seem quite blue collar. They're kind of everyday guys who've just done something remarkable. I look at people like Ron Rutland, the fat kid on a bike who got on his bicycle one day and decided to ride through every country in Africa en route to a Rugby World Cup, and subsequently did two more. Or Chris Burtish, who did the world's first solo stand-up paddleboard trip across the Atlantic Ocean. Chris is absolutely barking mad, and I don't know how he got through that in one piece, but he did, and has a great story to tell as a result. And I think whether it is celebrities who've joined me over the years on the Dan Nicholl Show, or it's people who make, produce, sell wine on Dan Really Likes Wine, it's the same core, and that is great stories to tell and great people to get to know and to interact with, and that's the real joy of what I get to do.
Well, Dan, you're also part of this media contingent that has known traditional media. I mean, having been on DSTV, enjoyed a very, very strong platform, but also now having embraced a whole new era of media where things are moving into the digital space, onto YouTube, into podcasting. Or what kind of freedom has this shift from television and sort of your mainstream media into some of the more digital media? What has that given you?
When I was 17 years old, I'd just come back from spending a year in Australia as a Rotary Youth Exchange student, and I'd got to know a guy called Mark Pozzo, who ran a sports show on Radio 3 in Zimbabwe. I was born in Northern Ireland, but I grew up in Zimbabwe, and I'd returned to finish school. And Mark had a show with Simon Parkinson, who now works on radio in South Africa, and it was a sports show. And Simon knew nothing about sport and still doesn't, but he's a very entertaining presenter. And Mark, great on sport, but still finding his feet then in radio. He's now become one of Zimbabwe's most accomplished radio presenters. And I used to write their sports scripts. And the way that happened was at 4:00 in the afternoon, I would listen to the BBC World Service on my little yellow transistor radio in my bedroom. While the sports stories were read out, I would scribble them down and then write them out from 4:15 to 4:30 in slightly more extended form, run down to the school office. My parents were teachers at Watershed College, where I went to school. The school office would fax my handwritten notes through to Radio 3 in Harare, and at 5:00 I would listen listened to the radio, surrounded by my very proud family, as we listened to Parky and Poz's Live at 5 sports show with the stories written by me, having copied them off the BBC an hour earlier. And that's where the world was at that stage. Fax machines were probably as technologically able as it got. And I now look at where we are today, where if I am recording a piece, I've just got back from doing 10 days in Scotland, hosting the Alfred Dunhill Links Championships. We recorded some episodes of Dan Really Likes Wine with Dave Farrell from Lincoln Park, with Alan Lamb, the England cricketer, with Piers Morgan, the media titan. And you are recording a podcast, but you're also filming it because it's going to sit on YouTube. And you are doing clips that can go onto Instagram and onto X and onto TikTok. And you're also collating the information for an editorial that can go out. And it's become a space that is both enormously accessible and difficult at the same time, because anybody can now start a YouTube channel or kick off a podcast. In fact, I think there are more people who have podcasts than people who don't around the world. But it also means there are so many people fighting for the same space, fighting for the same audience. And so the challenge is not to get started, because anybody can. The challenge is to find people who are actually interested in what you have to say, people who want to engage with you, people who find some value in your offering. And it makes it both very exciting and full of opportunity, but also quite daunting and a lot more work than it used to be. So it's very, very different to those years of a fax machine and scribbled notes in 1996.
And as you rattle off those celebrity names, I'm almost inclined to say thanks so much, Dan, for chatting to us tonight. But we're going to push on into talking about the thing you just mentioned, finding stuff that people like to talk about. And one of those is wine. It's something that comes up, I think, at least around the dinner table. And you've started this media brand called Dan Really Likes Wine. What inspired you, to turn your love of wine into a fully fledged platform? And why do you think it's resonated with people so much?
The start was a combination of initially an accident and then a case of shameless bullying. I was a sports editor with iAfrica.com, probably the News 24 of its day. And having recently joined, I was also on Cape Talk presenting at the time. Our lifestyle editor was bemoaning the number of gallery events and wine launches and restaurant openings she was invited to and couldn't possibly get to. And as a guy in his early 20s, not making much money as a journalist, I felt that free food and wine was something I could probably make do with. Suggested I might be able to find some time to help her out. Promised her I'd done this sort of thing extensively. I'd never done anything of the sort, and got packed off to my very first wine event. And that kick-started a discovery that I knew very little about wine, but wanted to know a whole lot more. And over the next years, just ended up going to more and more events, learning and discovering, and eventually having traveled to a lot of wine estates, met a lot of winemakers, and started to host a lot of wine events as somebody who'd emceed for some time. Got cornered an event by Michael Jordan, who had wandered up to me at an event, asked to show me a video. Well, you're Michael Jordan, you can do what you want, really. And it was a video of Gary Vaynerchuk, the American media titan, who had started his career making videos on his iPhone 2 of his parents' bottle store and trying to help them with some very basic marketing. And Michael's words were, "You're funnier than this guy and you know more about wine. We need this in South Africa." So given those comments, I realized he was 7 bottles of Chardonnay down and ignored him. And he got hold of my number and he phoned me 3 days running. "Have you started your wine show?" So November 2016, we started Dan Really Likes Wine. At that stage, the Dan Nicholl show was into its 3rd season. We were doing really nicely on SuperSport and DSTV. We knocked up the board you can see behind me, popped it onto the wall of the cellar, and really started it thinking this is going to be a really good excuse to drink some nice wine. And the aspiration wasn't a huge amount beyond that. But very quickly, in terms of your question on resonance, it became apparent that there was a gap in the South African wine space, and that there was a lot of conversation that was quite technical on wine. Wine has done a remarkably good job over the years of making itself inaccessible to people. If you don't know what malolactic fermentation is, you don't belong in the club. And people are scared of wine. People are intimidated by wine. I've been intimidated by wine. I still am intimidated when I go to a new part of the world. The wine lists are terrifying things. And so what could we do that didn't dumb down wine, because wine certainly doesn't deserve that, but could make wine something people could access on their own terms? And it gets back to the point I made earlier about stories. finding the story. So yes, this might have a certain degree of residual sugar, or these might be the acid levels or the pH. But nobody beyond the inner circle of wine is massively interested in that space. But when you can introduce people to an extraordinary winemaker and her winemaking story, or a producer and how he came into being and why a wine is named what it is, suddenly there's an emotional touch point, and people start finding a reason to like wine beyond just what's in the glass. And I think that's where we've had both a great deal of success and also an enormous amount of fun. And so now, 9 years later, the ability to drink vast amounts of very expensive wine at somebody else's expense has been most welcome.
Well, who are you to deny Michael Jordaan's request? And I'm glad you went down that road. So I'm chatting to the one and only Dan Nicholl. We both need to top up our glasses. So here's a quick break and more of the Sandton Times Hour right after this.
Follow the Sandton Times on social media.
At Sandton Times.
For the break, Dan Nicholl and I were discussing how he got into sports, how he got into wine, and he's obviously the host of a really great podcast called Dan Really Likes Wine, available on all good digital media platforms. And Danny, you've spoken about some of the way that wine can be awfully serious, yet your show does make it fun, accessible, and human. How do you strike that balance between educating people, but also making it entertaining and kind of opening up the wine world?
If I think back to my years at school and subsequently at university, the years that stick out most, the memories that are the clearest and the fondest, are from teachers who kept me interested, and a teacher who could weave a story around a subject, who could keep me compelled by the subject matter, was one who was always going to be somebody who I felt was doing their job really well. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. Teaching is maybe too strong a word, but definitely exposing people to some of the extraordinary array of wine that we have, and mostly South African, but not exclusively. My wife is Greek, so we drink a lot of Greek wine. She's a lawyer. I didn't read our marriage contract properly, so it's actually in there. But wine from around the world, which is important to do because it broadens your palate and it also makes you realize how good the wine is in South Africa. But when you do chat about it, you want to give people a bit of a sense of what that wine is, but there is so much fun to wine. We want to sit around a table with friends and enjoy it and celebrate it and talk about what makes it special to us, and agree to disagree, that you think this wine is lovely and I think it's awful, and both of us are right, because wine is purely a matter of opinion, and it doesn't matter whose opinion that is. If you don't like it, it's not a good wine for you, and if you do, it is, irrespective of where it's from or what it costs. And I think having that very relaxed approach to a subject that can take itself quite seriously really is the most important access point.
I mentioned that you were at Cape Wine 2025, I think one of the biggest events in terms of South African wine and its calendars. What was some of your biggest takeaways from the conversations that you had, and where does the South African wine industry stand right now based on the temperature on the ground?
We entered Cape Wine in not a negative space, but a space where wine had a lot of question marks. Young people aren't drinking as much, and certainly not drinking as much wine. Far more countries are producing wine with less people actually drinking it. There are tariffs which change by the hour if we're talking about America. There are pressures on land, wine areas that people are looking to develop as property. There are lots and lots of issues that wine is grappling with. And so it could have been easy to come away from Cape Wine going, oh, this is an industry that's got some issues. And it certainly does. There are certainly issues that have to be addressed, and I've touched on a number of them. But there was such a feel-good atmosphere to Cape Wine. The South African wine industry is unique in the world in the extent to which it is united. Our winemakers are friends. They work together. They love each other's wine. They exchange wine. If somebody's battling to get their Chenin Blanc just right, they phone a friend down the road. What have you done to get yours right? There is that camaraderie to our wine that is such a wonderful element of our industry. There is also just fantastic wine. And I had, over the course of the 3 days I was there, a whole pile of guests from around the world. The great Jimmy Smith, one of England's great wine voices, TJ Douglas out of the Urban Grape in Boston. We had a couple of guys who were bringing wine into China. We had Yanni, the top sommelier out of Sweden. Just this great collection worldwide. And they are swept away. And I use the term in its present because I know they still are, because I spoke to one of them yesterday. Still captivated by the beauty of South Africa, by the warmth of its people, and by just how good our wine is. And not simply the Chenin Blanc, which we know is the best in the world, or the classic Stellenbosch interpretation of a Bordeaux blend that has always found favour internationally, but by our Chardonnay, which has never been better, by our Cap Classique, which is sitting very comfortably alongside great Champagne and Prosecco and other sparklings of the world. Sauvignon Blanc, that is not this acid bomb that's going to strip the enamel from your teeth and put you on Rennies for a month, but actually give you this wine of greater depth and interest and beautiful fruit. The Soir Clant Syrahs, which has such elegant and beautiful wines. There's just so much we're making that if you would ask me what our biggest challenge is in South African wine, it's almost creating a sense of identity, because we do so much so well that it can be a little confusing, a little overwhelming. There's so much amazing wine in South Africa. What on earth should I be drinking? And it's a great problem to have, but it is one that speaks to just how well we are doing so much.
Well, that's whet your palate. Go check out Dan Really Likes Wine on all the digital platforms and get to know your wine a bit better, or maybe get yourself acquainted with some of the amazing South African wines that we do have. Dan, before I let you go, I know that you are very well acquainted with Ronan Keating, if anyone follows you on Instagram. How did that friendship come about?
I've known Ro for a long time now. The Alfred Dunhill Links Championships, the golf event I was over hosting recently, features celebrities from all over the world. And the highlight of the week is the Saturday night party. It's an evening I get to host. It is a star-studded room. I remember the very first time I hosted it 17 years ago, standing up and looking at the front row 10 yards ahead of me, and there were Michael Douglas, Bill Murray, and Samuel L. Jackson sitting in the front row. Deep breath and let's go. The celebrity players involve many musicians, and those musicians join Elio Pace's fantastic band and become Elio Pace and the contestants on the Saturday night. And we've had over the years everybody from the surfer Kelly Slater on guitar to Tico Torres, I mentioned earlier, from Bon Jovi on the drums, Mike Rutherford from Mike and the Mechanics on guitar, Dave Farrell from Linkin Park on bass, and then Ronan Keating doing an extraordinary job as the band leader singing. He's ageless, which is very annoying, but he's got such an incredible voice. He's such a natural performer, and he's an absolute wizard. He also loves playing golf, and he loves wine. He's a big fan of the Optima by Anthony Rupert. He's got a big collection of South African wine. Just a great guy, and a very cherished friendship.
Well, Dan Nicholl, it's been such a pleasure having you on the Sandton Times Hour.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
So as we head into the second half of the Sandton Times Hour, my name is Alexander Leipner, and if there's anything that sounded good during the show, but you didn't manage to get all the details, we'll hop onto the website, check out the show notes for this week's edition on sandtontimes.co.za, and you'll get a detailed breakdown of everything we've discussed, names, links, further reading, all you need to know. We try and be as comprehensive as possible on the website and get that up there for you. Also, be sure to check out the social media accounts at Sandton Times on your preferred social media platform, or WhatsApp 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866, 084 726 3866, and you use that to send through your voice notes, text messages, and more. And that's the Sandton Times' exclusive WhatsApp number. We turn to our entertainment commentator that we connect with every single week, and it's Tat Wolfen. And Tat, you've been monitoring the Malibu Film Festival, which is in the US. It's been going since 1997, and they've announced some of their winners.
I have indeed. I have a sort of a love-hate relationship with film festivals, because, I don't know, most of the film festivals that I see lately don't really excite me. I noted the best film at the Malibu Film Festival is actually available to be watched for free on the net. And I watched it, and I'll tell you a little bit about it, okay? So if you go to www.aninconvenientstudy.com, or you can also go to YouTube and find An Inconvenient Study, look it up. It's a documentary, and the filmmakers are putting it out there to be watched for free around the world because they believe that it's something very important. Their essential message, I think, is that is the pharmaceutical industry, is it there to actually make us better, or is it there to make us more dependent on the pharmaceutical industry? So is it keeping us within their circle, and is it necessarily making us healthier?
Right.
Now, I know that I thoroughly enjoyed this documentary. I know that you haven't seen it yet,
No.
so I'm going to make it clear that Sandton Times is neither endorsing nor disendorsing this movie, if such a term exists. But I think it'll open a lot of animated discussion between you, your friends, your family members. So, yeah, it's called An Inconvenient Study.
And it took the best movie at the Malibu Film Festival. Okay,
Look,
all right.
It won Best Film at the Malibu Film Festival, yeah.
All right, okay. Well, we'll go check that out. Then Disneyland is celebrating 70 years, and this just brings back a flood of memories for me. But I think they've got something happening on Disney Plus.
Yeah, they have a documentary on Disney Plus on their 70 years. So you can just put in your search engine Disneyland 70 years. It's actually an ABC TV documentary. So it has that format. You know, I'm not wild about these TV show documentaries, their formats, because they have like a section where they deal with a particular subtopic, and then they tease the next coming section, and then it goes to black, and then it comes back up, and then they do another chunk. So these TV documentaries don't have a flow as such. It's sort of chunk, chunk, chunk. But putting that aside, you know, I've always been a fan of Walt Disney ever since I was a kid. I just looked up to this incredible man who had vision and just did things way ahead of his time. You know, he was a pioneer in animation. And when he was going to make the first animated feature film, which I'm sure you know was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, when he announced that he was going to make this animated feature film, he was greeted with derision because people, and in fact, his movie was even dubbed, before it was released, it was dubbed Disney's Folly, because people in general saw. They loved his cartoons, but they said it's cartoons, it's funnies that we see before the movies. How can you have a funny, you know, a cartoon as the actual feature film?
Yeah.
So of course, a lot of people in the media scoffed at this thing until it was released, and then people were just blown over. So yeah, he was a man who was always ahead of his time, and this documentary tells you how he came upon the idea. As a kid, he had visited this amusement park in his area, and he thought, oh, well, this is interesting, this is nice. But of course, being Walt Disney, he had to take things further. So it's like, okay, you know, an amusement park is fine, but what can we bring to it that makes it revolutionary, you know, and that makes it specifically ours, that makes it Disney and not just a theme park. And his wife, bless her socks, had reservations because her association with theme parks and fun fairs were that they were grimy and a bit dodgy, and they had been back then, you know. So, well, he said, well, this one's not going to be grimy and dodgy. This one's going to be very family oriented. It's going to be clean and exciting and fun, and it's going to be the sort of place that you're going to bring the whole family to, and that everyone's going to love, from the 4-year-olds to the 94-year-olds. This is going to be the thing that we create. And he needed money, you know. So what did he do? He went to all these different organizations, and they all kind of thought, yeah, not really, you know. And the place that he had selected was a town called Anaheim, which back then was this podunk little town, you know. Today, Anaheim is this thriving community and town because of Disneyland and because of all the industry that has developed around Disneyland. But back then, it was just this funny little town, and people were going, no, who's going to schlep out there to Anaheim? And yeah, and is your concept going to work? And interestingly, the place where he got the financing eventually was ABC Television, which now has made the documentary about Disneyland and which now belongs to the Disney organization. Isn't it funny? He had approached ABC TV to provide financing for Disneyland. Today, the Disney organization owns ABC.
Unbelievable.
It's a really funny world that we live in.
I remember going to Hollywood Studios in Orlando, and they actually have a special theater where they show the Disney story. And it is the most magical thing to watch, to see how this man created this business and this entire economy around Orlando. I mean, Orlando literally eats and breathes around these theme parks that bring millions of dollars and millions of people to Florida every single year. Never mind all the Disney parks around the world and everything else that Disney has become. And I mean, to think that this guy was fired from his first newspaper job as an artist because he lacked creativity by whoever the judge of that was, it's just unbelievable.
And this documentary gives a teeny little bit of the Disney history, because obviously the documentary needs to concentrate on Disneyland itself. As you say, that docu that they show you in Disney World in Orlando gives you more detail, and there are other documentaries on Disney Plus as well. So this docu gives you a very, very brief history of how he got to Disneyland. It doesn't tell you all that whole arduous process from, him being the animator before he could actually bring in enough financing to create a studio, and how he and his brother created the studio. So this docu does concentrate on Disneyland itself, and it has various celebrities from Josh Gad to Julie Andrews to John Stamos, telling you maybe how it was a part of their childhood, or in Julie Andrews' case, obviously she knew and worked with Walt Disney, so she brings her own perspective to it. And it's also interesting to know that opening day at Disneyland was a bit of a disaster, because they had sold 10,000 tickets and all these counterfeit tickets came into being. So I think something like 30,000 people eventually arrived at Disneyland on opening day. They weren't prepared for that volume of people, and things weren't completely ready. They weren't really good to go yet, and it was so hot that the tarmac was melting, and some women's high heel shoes were sinking into the tarmac, and they had a problem with water because the plumbing people were on strike. There were various things going down that were pretty disastrous, but the thing is that people ultimately had a good day. Yes, there were things that were going wrong and stuff like that, but people were so excited about the things that they saw and the things that they experienced that the word that went out ultimately was that, wow, you have got to come and visit this place. And Disney, again, was ahead of his time. Disney knew the power of television. And you must remember, this was a long time ago. Today, linear television doesn't really have that kind of power anymore. But Disney knew the power of television and live television, and he broadcast the opening live.
Right.
And the word went out to the United States, and everybody needed to go to Disneyland.
Yeah, and I think they still need to go. It's probably one of the happiest places you'll visit, and when you see those fireworks erupting over the Magic Castle at 8 o'clock at night, you feel like a 12-year-old again, and it's just incredible. Also one of the most expensive days out, but also one of the happiest, though. Tat, we've only got we've only got a few more minutes left. I just want to quickly just touch on your review up on the website for Good Fortune, the new Keanu Reeves movie.
I'm not going to give too much away about my review, other than to say that it is available on sandtontimes.co.za. I just need to tell you that our friend Keanu Reeves, who's been doing lots of shooting of late in his movies, has now donned a pair of wings, and he now becomes an angel.
Okay.
So he's really turned the tables on his recent stereotype.
Amazing. Well, we're going to check that out on the website, Good Fortune, the review, and Tat, I wish you good fortune until we chat again next week.
Thank you, my friend. I look forward to your angelic presence next week.
Follow the Sandton Times on social media.
At Sandton Times.
So Sandton City turned the spotlight on mental health this past week by releasing the Words That Heal song alongside a pop-up store. It's in collaboration with the Riky Rick Foundation for the promotion of emotional well-being, and the shopping destination unveiled the next chapter of its powerful campaign titled Words That Heal. Earlier this year, Sandton City invited its shoppers and the broader community to share voice notes of encouragement, messages they would want to offer someone going through a tough time. These raw, heartfelt submissions poured in from across the country, forming a collective outpouring of empathy and strength. And from hundreds of entries, a selection was woven together into an original song titled Words That Heal, featuring none other than the voice of Riky Rick himself. The hip-hop track serves as both a tribute and a reminder that no one walks their journey alone, and that even in silence, words have the power to reach hearts. Now, they released the song on the 10th of October 2025 to coincide with World Mental Health Day, and the track is now available across social media and major streaming platforms. We've put it up on the Sandton Times website, but I had a chance to catch up with Lana Maree-Arendse, who's the marketing portfolio manager for Sandton City, to chat about this initiative.
So Sandton City this year embarked an initiative where we really thought there was a need. Mental wellness is such an important, passionate topic that there's so many people who don't want to raise their voice about how they're feeling, they don't want to share their emotion. There's a lot of stigma around raising your voice around mental wellness. And what we did, we decided that this year we really want to make people feel like it's okay to share how you're feeling. It's okay not to be okay. And so we partnered with the Riky Rick Foundation to bring this message across in a campaign called Words That Heal.
What was the overall response like from people coming to the mall and taking part in this initiative?
Yeah, so the first phase of our campaign started 2 months ago, where we had a call to action to ask the public to share their words of healing, share their words of support via our WhatsApp line. And the outcome was absolutely phenomenal. All of those words and the messages of hope that were shared via the WhatsApp line were actually all part of a bigger plan to create a song which was going to be which was messages of hope, essentially going to be called Words That Heal, which is what you're going to hear here this evening.
Yeah, I believe you did a school tour around this. Tell us a little bit more how that went.
Yeah, so what we realized is that the 60% of the youth in South Africa are really affected by mental health issues. And we really decided that how is Sandton City going to take this campaign that's in our shopping centre with the foundation, but take it out to the schools and the youth that are really impacted. So we started doing school tours, really taking our messages of hope to the school tours. And on one of the school tours, we've asked some live poll questions where people can answer how are they really feeling in that moment, what stresses them out the most, what gives them the most anxiety. And the top answer came out in our schools, and the one school was, it's the pressure to be perfect. And when we heard that, we realized that this has got to be a lot bigger. We really have to make sure that the youth are feeling loved, supported, and encouraged to really share their feelings and seek help when they really do need it.
So now that part is wrapped up, you're now launching a song, but there's also a retail experience attached to that as well. Just talk us through that.
Yeah, so the song is launching this evening. It's a combination of all of the words that the public shared via our WhatsApp line, as well as Riky Rick's voice, as well as a beat that's actually a Riky Rick beat that we found. So that song is launching this evening. The limited edition merchandise that we've created with designer Samurai Farai is going to be on sale. There are t-shirts, hoodies, and scarves, all limited edition. All of the funds from the downloads of the song to the selling of the merchandise all goes to the Riky Rick Foundation in support of youth having mental health support that they need.
Are you planning to make this a regular thing, or is this more of a zeitgeist initiative, something that is right for the moment?
Yeah. Listen, I think mental health is always going to be an ongoing issue. And if this was really a start of something bigger for Sandton City, then I'm really looking forward to that. But really, this could be the catalyst of something bigger to come for us, yeah.
That was the voice of Lana Maree-Arendse, marketing portfolio manager for Sandton City, chatting about the Words That Heal campaign. And you can also go immerse yourself in this experience. They've got a pop-up activation located at the upper level next to the Boss store, running until 9th November 2025. And the space is designed in collaboration with acclaimed South African visual artist Samurai Farai. And he's got a vibrant tribute to the spirit that they call artivism. You'll find some limited edition merchandise, some t-shirts, hoodies, scarves, and all inspired by the campaign to raise hope, resilience, and expression, but also the proceeds of the merchandise is going directly to the Riky Rick Foundation, looking to help fund mental health outreach programs for the youth, and also a creative platform that provides safe outlet for emotional expression. So go check that out. And that wraps up another Sandton Times Hour for another week. Feel free to send through your questions, comments, and feedback. You can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za. Connect on social media @Sandton Times. Hop onto the website sandtontimes.co.za or WhatsApp 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866. and feel free to send through your voice notes, text messages, and media. As always, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, and all other leading digital audio platforms, and you can join the growing community there. And thank you to all my guests who made time to be on the show this week, as well as the team behind the scenes. And a special thank you to you for listening, and God willing, we'll do it all again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the Sandton Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.